Welcome to Module 8, Hair and Cloth Dynamics, and welcome to this particular lesson, which is the fundamentals of drawing hair. And the first very important fundamental is that of looseness and flow, right? Looseness and flow, being loose, being quick with your lines, and being flowy. A friend had said to me many years ago that hair flows and so should you. And I also want you to apply this concept to cloth dynamics when we're talking about drawing cloth, right, and drawing clothing. Hair and cloth are very much affected by gravity. They tend to have a flow to them and a rhythm, and you want to move your hand in a way, using your arm to draw, that you're getting these nice, smooth lines with tapered edges, all right, that have no kinks along the way, all right, unless it's style dependent. That you really want to draw hair in a loose and flowy way. Remember, if we draw lines really slowly and we're trying to get flow going, we lose out on the tapering, which is very important in hair because, of course, hair strands are very thin, and these tapers imply the thinness of the hair. But we also get these weird kinks happening along the way that really doesn't really happen in hair. Hair is very smooth and flowy, and it just does its own thing. Of course, we're talking in a generalized sense here. Certain hairstyles and hair types have different qualities to them, but in a general sense, we want to be drawing hair in a very natural way and in a very loose way. So please keep in mind looseness, and of course return to those previous modules if you've forgotten those key concepts of looseness, but it is absolutely pivotal in drawing hair. Right, now let's get a little head model going over here. And something we want to keep in mind is hair directionality, right? What's actually happening with the hair directionality and what's happening with the gravity of the hair. Now, the hair is really like some kind of crazy plant. It sprouts from the scalp, usually everywhere, of course, and it kind of moves about in different directions and has a little bit of volume from its sprouting points. As it comes up and builds on top of the other hairs, it gains some volume, and then eventually it's affected by gravity and it gets pulled down the front, the sides, and the back of the head. All right, so we want to keep in mind that there is this sprouting happening. And of course, you've probably seen people who will brush their hair in a particular way so that they have a middle path or a side path or what have you. And that's a good example of where the sprouting can kind of occur. So something like this might happen, right, where the hair is kind of sprouting, and then it has to move back over the back of the head. So don't forget to always indicate this multi-directional movement of the hair from the top of the head, right, going backwards, coming forwards, going to the side, and so on and so forth. All right, so we want to keep in mind the directionality of the hair and gravity affecting the hair. It sprouts up and out, and then it's affected by gravity. All right, hopefully that diagram looks a bit insane, but hopefully you get the crux of that. So let's in fact put some notes over here for ourselves, and we will just remind ourselves of looseness and flow. And of course, directionality and gravity. All right. And in this same vein, don't forget about the wind, right, as well as the angle of the character, right, or the angle of their head. These things will, of course, affect the directionality and the way gravity is pulling on the hair. All right. Now, we want to move on to a concept called hair volume, and this is a very quick shortcut, but it's such a useful thing to know. When we have a head, a lot of the time, especially if you're beginning at art or you're quite new to art still, we tend to want to draw hair directly on the scalp here. And we want to start going like, okay, there's some hair coming out here and it's doing all these things. But the only time that really happens is when the hair is wet, that it is so close to the skull. What we want to always strive to do is just a few centimeters, a centimeter or two, scale dependent on your character, right? That's not real world centimeters, it's a character's version of centimeters. You want to ensure that the top of the hair is really floating above the head. And this gives the hair a more natural look, right? It's showing off the volumes of the hair in the character. Okay. And you can see here how I'm really getting that hair look by being very loose and not trying to overly control the directions of the hair and what's happening with the hair. I have a general idea, but I know that for it to look loose, I have to be loose. So I'm emphasizing again, looseness and flow. All right. So we want to keep in mind hair volume, and we want to draw the hairline just a little bit above the head, right? Hair volume. All right. The fourth thing we want to keep in mind is that we want to begin drawing hair with volumes. I know, okay, let's say masses, right? I don't want to confuse our terminology. We want to begin drawing hair with masses and shapes, okay? And what we mean by this is that we want to make sure that we're thinking in a rough and refined sense in terms of workflow. So if I'm drawing my character here, we'll get another head going here, that when I'm planning the hair, I'm not drawing the hair. And when I'm drawing the hair, I'm drawing the hair, right? I'm not planning the hair. So when I'm planning a hairstyle, let's say we have a character with an up style. We'll give her a side part, and her hair will flow down. We'll remember the spacing above the hair. That we're kind of just putting in these big volumes. We're not doing thousands of strands everywhere and trying to get all the little lines to overlap nicely and things like that. We're not really doing that. We just want to plan the big volumes. All right, so there's one volume there and a big volume here. It's going to be behind the ear. And those are our big volumes. And of course, there's a multitude of hairstyles out there. So the shapes and the volumes will look different. And the reason we're calling them volumes is we want to kind of see them almost as these kind of 3D chunky bits going over the form. So I'm going to kind of draw what that one piece may look like as if it kind of folded over the back of the head, and it's this very 3D element, and it has weight to it and thickness to it, right? So we want to think about the massing in our planning stage. In our refined stage is where we will turn the hair into smooth, beautiful, silky, lovely looking hair. All right. Let's clear this stuff out of the way. So we want to keep masses and shape in mind. Okay, our fifth point here is we want to avoid stranding. Overstranding. We want to avoid overstranding. It's very tempting to go crazy with the hair once you've got the masses and the shapes down. It's very tempting to want to go and start like every strand. There's a strand for everything happening, and you know you've got the mass there, and we're putting hair lines on everything, and everything's like super detailed, and we want to draw the hair with all these lines. It may be tempting to do that. Take my advice. Let us not do that at all. Hair tends to bunch together and group together, right? And because of that, we want to focus on the masses, and then we want to imply the details of the strands. We don't want to draw in all the strand detail, okay? This is very, very, very important for you to know. We do not want to draw in every single micro strand. We want the viewer to see like, okay, cool, there's a clump of hair here. Okay, let's just get that mass in. And we're going to draw in a few strands. 1, 2, some overlaps there, some lines here just to show the gravitation, the gravity and the directionality of the hair, some overlaps. And we want to try, when we're in our cleanup, to leave the bulk of the interior of the hair fairly empty, right? When you get more advanced and you've got a lot of practice in drawing hair, then you can start deciding how you might want to add in additional details based on the style that you're going for. Maybe you're going for more of an American comic book style where we may end up seeing a few extra strands in the hair. But for now, focus on the massing. So avoid overstranding. Don't go in and put like hair strands on everything. You'll mess it up. Focus on the masses and getting the volumes, right? Getting the clumps of hair together and reading clearly. All right. We always want to think in 3D, guys. Of course, we're talking about a very round form here when we're talking about the cranium section. All right. So we've got a lot of directions happening. This goes back to directionality, but I want to just reinforce you have to almost think about this in a sculptural way. How would the hair fall over this cranium area? All right, so that is avoiding overstranding. And as I said, we want to work in the rough and refined workflow way here, right? Rough and refined. And the reason is, most of the time you'll probably find you'll end up detailing / drawing the actual hair itself in the refined stage, or in the sort of cleaning up the rough stage. You generally don't draw the actual bulk of the hair in the planning phase. You're just kind of just planning the hair out as you're doing it in the rough stage. You're just kind of creating the plan of the forms, keeping these key points in mind as you do so. So, for example, I'm going to do an example head here, and we'll do a more creative hairstyle. We'll mix up some hairstyles just for fun. Okay, I'm going to draw a female character. We'll draw in a bit of a, maybe more of a cartoony kind of style. I'm going to keep her facial features fairly simplistic because we want to focus on the hair. Okay, just give her a slight smile. Let's add a new layer and draw in some hair. So what I want to do here is this is my rough stage. I'm going to come in and kind of plan out maybe some big form here. And we'll give her a long hair on the outside here, just kind of planning these big shapes, keeping things loose. And on the side of her hair, let's give her some plaits, maybe, giving maybe more of a Viking sort of look. Give her some plaits. And why not also plan in a ponytail coming out the back of her head, maybe not that high, and just plan the mass of that. So this is almost like a big bubble. The volume of this, if we were to volume it out, would be something like that. And the volume here of this would be something like this as it comes down. Right, so we're thinking about the masses and the volumes of the hair. And these little guys are basically little cylinders. So we're always still working with forms in those respects. All right. And now that that plan is done, right, when I come to doing, let's just make this a little bit bigger. When I come to doing the actual hair drawing on top of this, that's when I can start doing the overlaps, the line overlaps, and keeping things very loose. Right, let's just make this slightly bigger. And we're going to move into hair refine stage on her. And here I can now try to do things in a way where I'm imagining the directionality of the hair. I'm creating overlaps, intentional overlaps here, where the overlaps help me bring in detail. So I just very loose with my hand, varying the strands because I don't want to sawtooth, right? I want to avoid sawtoothing as much as possible. And I can imply some strands, but I want to keep the interior area free of too many hairs. And I can just add things as I go here, right? And these little plait areas will just kind of imply some plait details here. You can see I'm really just putting a bunch of overlapping ovular forms there to give her hair that plaited look. Okay, we'll go more into plaits in detail a little later on. The key thing with hair as well, more than anything when you're at this particular stage, is ensuring the overlaps actually read. If you have tangents in the hair makes no sense to the viewer, right? You can have no tangents. You have to really think about having everything have some kind of overlap, logical overlap happening. So you can see here, even as I do these, I'll do this line for detail, for example, and there's my overlap. Here where the hair turns, there's my overlap, there's my overlap, here's an overlap. Drawing hair really has a lot to do in this stage, the refine stage, with ensuring the overlaps read. So for example, down here, there's a bit of a tangent. I have to enhance that overlap so that it reads. Can add extra hairs, but they need to have an overlap. All right, so we want to be thinking about those overlaps at this stage, but also, once again, I know I'm pushing this point, but you have to understand how important it is. Looseness is absolutely critical when you're drawing the hair. Absolutely critical. It's impossible to draw appealing hair, I would say, without being loose. You can draw hair, but it may look a little bit stiff, or it may look wiry, or what have you. Okay, so just adding in these extra details quick, just to kind of finish the look a little bit. But looseness is pivotal. All right. So looseness is absolutely pivotal. And don't be tempted once again to put a million lines in the hair. All right, so those are our big points of drawing hair. Looseness and flow, directionality and gravity, hair volume, masses and shape, avoiding overstranding, and thinking about the rough and the refined stages when you're planning out the hair. Don't let hair freak you out. I know hair seems massively complicated, but believe me, if you follow these rules, and let me just emphasize this as well, we'll put this as point 7, especially the overlap rule, right? If you follow these rules, drawing hair is really easy, okay? It actually is really easy, and you'll enjoy it a lot. You'll see it's quite a lot of fun. We've got a couple more hair videos to go, but these are the core rules. If you strengthen yourself in these foundations, you will draw hair well very quickly. I'll see you in the next lesson.